Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 19th, 2018 meeting of the Dover Area School Board. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Benko, could we have the roll call, please?
Mr. Rawhauser?
Here.
Mrs. Maley? Here. Mrs. Herman?
Here.
Mr. Emick?
Here.
Mr. Eifert?
Here.
Mr. DeLauder? Mr. Deschaux?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mrs. Britton?
Here.
One member absent.
Thank you. First on our agenda tonight is a presentation regarding the playground at Live Elementary.
Good evening. Jen pulled up a sketch of the playground kind of as, as it stands right now. We have in the upper right-hand corner, you have a pointer.
I don't know if it'll work. Here's this one.
Up in here, currently we have it's kind of like a metal spider that they climb on, and we'd like to take that out and put a ribbon wall climber about 8 foot high, made out of plastic with some handholds and such on it, in place of that. In this area here, there's it's kind of like a metal dome. Kids can climb on it. They want to take that out, and we're going to put a shade structure in its place. And then there's 2 swing sets here, kind of an older style swing set. We're going to take both of those out, and then we're going to put new swings into place of them, kind of from this point down in a straight line. We're going to eliminate this section of the playground as you see it now, and we're kind of shorten the playground up a little bit. But we're going to take this area between the road and the current playground, we're going to make that all into mulch. Now, mulch is about 1 foot deep, which it has to be for code. And so if kids fall on it, you know, they don't get hurt. It's kind of like spongy and soft. Eventually, what we'd like to do is take this structure out right here. We're not going to do it just yet, but in the future, we'd like to take that out and maybe put some kind of a different type of climber play structure in there, maybe for the different age groups of kids. So that's kind of, I don't know if do you have the other pictures too? Oh, there you go. So this is how the swings would look. This type here, they'd be straight up and straight down. This is one of the newer pieces we have, and even newer when I say that, that's probably at least 15 years old. This doesn't show that old structure we're going to leave in right here. Currently, we're just going to leave that there. But this is the shade structure that'll be be put in where we take out the dome climber. And then over here is this little climbing wall in this section. And then we're also going to put these, I think they're called Foursquare. I think that's what they are, something like that. I'm not exactly sure if I have the right name for them, but basically you throw a ball and it could come out any one of 4 sides. I call them Foursquare. I don't know what they really are. So we're going to put 2 of those in, and then the basketball poles, there's 2 of them. There's one here and there's one over here. We're going to take those out because they're in pretty bad shape. That's all right. We're going to take those out and put new ones in because they're not in real good shape. So they're really pretty old. So that's kind of our game plan for upgrading Live's playground.
Is there a representative from the PTO here?
Yeah,
I believe they were supposed to give us a little presentation.
Sure.
Yes, please to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Schaefer, one of the members on the Live PTO Playground Committee. Dave pretty much covered everything. I believe you have the quotes in front of you for the equipment purchase through Game Time, as well as the install. I believe they're called the Playground Pros. Really, I'm just here for any questions. The committee was really assembled to kind of evaluate the current structures at the playground, come up with some feedback from the students and the teachers on what they'd like to see improved. From there, the committee developed a plan on what we would like to see, obtained the quote that you have tonight, and communicated that with Dr. Wiesling as well as Mr. Nelson, and that's why we're here tonight. So really, I'm here for any questions. I have some experience dealing with playground installs as well as playground purchasing, so I'm pretty familiar with the process.
Is it okay with insurance or whatever from the company if you do the installation?
The install would actually be done by, you have a quote in your packet from the Playground Pros. I believe that's district policy that it would have to be a certified installer.
Yeah, we don't want to get involved in installing. If something would go wrong, then we're liable for it, more liable for it, let's put it that way, than if it's installed by somebody that does it all the time.
Dave, you're going to do a lot of the groundwork, is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to take all the old equipment out, all the old foundations we're going to pull out, dig all the concrete footers up, get rid of all the equipment that's there at this time, and then reinstall. Once we're done, they call it wood carpet. It's really mulch, but they call it wood carpet, so we'll put the wood carpet back in. We have to use certified wood carpet. We can't just go down here to Spring Valley or H&H or somebody like that. We have to, it has to be certified mulch. It can't have any metal, can't have any rubber tire stuff in it, whatever. So, but that'll all be done. We do that every year at all schools, usually in early to mid-August. We go around, hit all the schools, and put all mulch in all of them anyway. So we'll just do that on this same track.
I have two questions related to the project. Cost-wise, number kind of jumps off the screen to me. It seems like a lot of money for what we're getting, but I've never priced playground equipment. So curious, is this a good price for what we're getting? Is it in line with what it should be? I mean, is there multiple places we've looked for equipment and that sort of thing? So that's my first question. Then the second question is, with the number of kids that are there, with the community using it, which is part of, I guess, the concern that there's a lot of community members that use that during off school hours. Do you envision that this is enough of a playground, enough equipment to keep the kids, entertained, active, or is it not really enough, but it's what we can afford right now?
Well, I can speak for the first part anyhow. I don't know if I can answer your second part of the question, but playground equipment is very expensive, and mainly it's expensive because of the liability involved in it. It has to be constructed a certain way. It has to be certified that it's safe by the manufacturer. They bear a lot of responsibility. This is a state contract, so almost everybody, I don't want to say everybody, but almost everybody sells playground equipment is under state contract. They're all going to be pretty close to the same price. Maybe sometimes you get a little bit better deal off one person than you do another, but it's always pretty close. I know we've done, Chris is here, I know we've done them at Playground North Salem. I don't know how many years ago that was. Was it 8? 6. And it wasn't cheap then. It was expensive then. And, this is what I would expect to see. It is a lot of money, and as far as the second part, I don't know about if it's enough or not. I can't answer that. So.
Well, yeah, and to jump in, I believe it's a start. The equipment is in need of upgrade. It's been, I think, you have your talking points there, probably over 20 years since that equipment was replaced, which it's at its end of its useful life. The plan with the PTO is to continue to look at additional pieces of equipment that they can fundraise for. So this is the first step with their matching contribution to renovate the playground at Live Elementary. I believe it's enough to keep them occupied at this, because the the pieces that we're taking out are being replaced with updated, safer equipment.
Absolutely, come on.
Hi, I'm Doug McGurn. I'm on the PTO board as well. When Andy went back to the equipment supplier, he found out it's going to cost about $8,000 to replace just the swing set equipment alone. The seats in the bay would have been an additional $2,700. To update the swings with the hangers, chains, and seats was an additional $5,300. And just to install those items was $7,300. So you're looking at about approximately $15,000 just to update the existing equipment. So we found it was more beneficial to replace some of that equipment. Also, Andy's plan was to cut back on the play surface area. So, you know, our thinking was we're saving the district money on the mulch alone, because we're cutting that area practically in half. Again, like Andy said, this is just our first initial, I guess, it's our first initial chance to upgrade what's existing on the playground, bring it up to code, bring it up to, you know, have the kids have a more enjoyable area to play with, because the equipment is older. We found that the shade structure, it doesn't really show on the picture you showed, but it is a 12 by 12 by 8 shade structure. And if you've ever been out to Live, there's not a lot of trees, there's not a lot of area. So not only is it going to be a place to play, but it's a place that kids can go and congregate. They can do outside school activities, you know, underneath this straight shade structure. I mean, some kids just want to go out and sit with their friends, you know. Some of the other things we want to fundraise, we wanted to do some painting on the playground. We want to add like a map of the United States, or do something so it's an interactive playground. You know, again, just kind of give it a facelift. But again, the big chunk would be coming from the equipment, you know, and as Mr. Nelson said, you know, playground equipment's not cheap. You know, we're finding that. But again, we're working with an approved vendor that, you know, is fully licensed. And then the district has also told us that they're going to help us remove the other equipment, which is going to be cost effective as well.
Have you looked into any grants or donations? Crystal Markheimer, you're sitting over there. Do you remember back in the Crawltown days, didn't we get some grant money or donations, I believe, wasn't it from even from Walmart that had programs that donated? We did. Yeah, so there are lots of other avenues out there as well.
Well, and that's, we're trying to partner with some of the community members. There's a group called Game On Sports down in Southern York, and they've offered to give us or donate a lot of playground equipment to us. You know, they came out, they looked at our existing basketballs that we got from Box Tops, and he said this isn't even considered a basketball in their realm of their world. I know they partnered with the district as far as they donated several football pants to the football team, working with Coach Heath. So they're actively pursuing to become a member of the district to kind of help partner with a lot of the equipment that we would need. I mean, they've even said that they'll come out, they'll do net change-outs, you know. Again, it's a community park too. So our hope is to not only help our children, but again, the school the day doesn't end at 3 o'clock. If our community can benefit from the playground as well, that's our intent. And then with the painting, I've also asked some local painters if they would help us with those projects. The kids asked if we could paint racing lines on the road drop-off area, just to kind of give them something. Again, the equipment's expensive, but there's things we can do that's also cost-effective, and that was all part of our rationale.
I do know when I was on PTO back in Weigelstown, back probably about 3 years ago or so, just one swing set. I think it was 4. If anybody around here can remember, what's out on the side there now? Are there? It's very small. Yeah, it's very small. It was $15,000 just for the swings alone. So it is very costly. But I would also agree with Rachel. I know there are, like, Lowe's have grant programs. I think you have to go through a formal grant writing process, but I think they do have a playground equipment component to whatever they do. So I definitely check that stuff out too. Even some of the state agencies like DCED or DCNR. I don't know if any of those places.
Well, I've been in contact with Seth Grove as well, just to see, again, treating it as not only a York County, a Dover school district, but opening it up to a county-wide. Again, we have apartments across the street, we have communities, so I would hope that, the state could help. Again, this is just our initial, let's give the playground a facelift. I mean, the PTO is committed to, a good chunk of this. And again, we're just asking for some help from the school board as well.
Where is this budgeted for? Anywhere?
So the project would be funded out of the capital project reserve. And the amount that the PTO is willing to donate is $20,000 towards the project. The district would need to fund approximately $40,718 to include the balance of the equipment costs and the cost for removal of the existing equipment and to reinstall wood carpeting.
I apologize if I missed this in the discussion. We have been talking that down the road there might be a potential realignment of buildings within the district to maybe like a K2, 3, 5 situation. Has that been considered in this discussion so that the equipment that is purchased now can be used for whatever grade levels might be at that building in the future?
Yes.
Yeah.
When we met, we made sure that it was K-6 compatible for any grade. Yep.
Okay.
Has there been any discussions with Dover Eagle Foundation? I'm not even quite sure where, if they're in a position right now to even help at all in that, but and I guess maybe, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouths, but $40,000 is a lot of money to put towards it. Not that it's not worth it, not that it's not valuable, but I'm not sure if we've exhausted all avenues of potential funding for this either. And that's not to take anything away from the $20,000 that the PTO is donating. I mean, that's very admirable. I guess my question then, following up on that with what's being said so far, is what kind of timeline are you looking at? Are you looking at this needs to happen during the summer so that it's in place for the fall? And is there room to explore, is there any other funding options out there before a commitment is made on our part?
In order to get the project done before the start of school, no. In order to get the equipment ordered, obviously we would need to order right away. There's a little bit of a lead time on that to work with Mr. Nelson to get everything scheduled with his staff as well as the installing company. It basically, if we delay it any longer, it will not be completed during the summer months before school starts. I would think it would be in everybody's best interest that a project like this be completed during the summer months when the kids are out of school.
Makes sense. And the wood mulch was part of the contract in that. I mean, I wasn't sure if I misunderstood you. That's going to be done in-house, or that's part of the contract? So you're going to do that, but that was listed as part of that contract price, was it not?
It's part,
That's part of what we're covering in that 40.
and as part of the $40,000.
700, whatever it was.
Okay.
How does Live's equipment compare to the other elementary schools, and when were they updated, and what kind of costs were we talking about then? I mean, is it Live's turn for this to be happening? As a district, is that somewhere we need to head?
Libe's most recent piece was purchased in June 2009. Prior to that, nothing has been updated since before 1998. So the rest of the equipment is pretty old. Just guess, because we're actually, Dave, we think we need your memory on this, but when Crawltown Elementary closed and we redistricted, the district spent $42,000 to add a playground to North Salem, correct? Okay. Weigelstown, we're not sure of the Weigelstown and Dover Elementary.
Weigelstown, when we did the renovation.
Hey Dave, can you speak into the microphone, please?
When we did the renovation at Weigelstown, I think in conjunction with the PTO at the time, we added a playground in back of, what's the wing? I'm not sure what it is.
It's the playground at the Box 100 side.
No, the other one. The one behind the art room.
The playground by Box 100 was the one that was
No. It was the one in back. I know it was. But anyway, we added that, and then I think about 3 years ago we added swing sets back there at the same spot. Dover Elementary, last time we did anything here was probably 2008, and that was I don't know enough about to tell you how much was funded by PTO and how much was funded by the district, but I know it was in 2008. They added a piece of playground equipment, and they installed it with volunteers, only to find out that wasn't the best way to do it. And they painted a bunch of equipment at that same time, but other than that, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, there's not been an organized method to replacing the playgrounds.
Right, and to point out, that piece that was added in 2009 was paid for by the PTO.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was. We put the carpet in. I know we did that, but I think the piece was paid for by PTO, yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, next is our first public comment period. This is for items on or off of tonight's agenda. This is a 3-minute period. If you have anything you would like to comment on, please come to the microphones and state your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing nobody moving, I believe Mr. Stefanovich is here from the township to give us a little update from the township.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
If you could talk into the microphone, I apologize. I can't hear in the recording if you don't.
Okay. All right. I just brought a few of the subdivision plans that are happening in our area, some information. I know Mr. Rawhauser asked about one last month, and I wasn't quite sure. The one he had asked about was the one over at Admire, and that one is called the Terra Vista Phase 3 project. That is proceeding, as you can tell, over there, and that will be 154 units, I believe, in that subdivision plan. Another one, of course, another project going on is the school. Another one is the Dunkin' Donuts down across from the golf course. You can see that one is moving along pretty quickly also.
Yes, I'm very excited.
I don't know what a second business is yet. They have not identified that, but I understand there is going to be a second business as part of that. Lidl, I still don't know anything about, other than I think we're going to get a little push there, either move or let us sell it to someone else possibly, I don't know. Another one is Newberry Commons. That's at Hilton and 74, so that's sort of like right across Hilton from that, and that one is moving along quite well. The properties have been, not the right word, demolished, but they've been taken down because a lot of it was repurposed, and I believe that barn is being rebuilt over in the Lancaster area someplace. There will be a complex of businesses in the Newberry Commons. I don't know exactly what is going to be there. I've heard rumors, we've heard rumors. So Burger King was one of them. I'm not sure if that's still for sure or not. So, but we will be finding out about that, all of us, soon. Another one is Buck McNaughton. That's over on the Bull Road side at Brook Drive. There is a subdivision plan in process over there, and I believe currently it's identified at about 196 units that will be in that subdivision. And then the last one that is just beginning to happen, it's called Norma's Ridge. It's here at East Canal at the Y, right out here. That property is in planning. It's shooting at the age-directed type development. I believe there's 40 units in there, and there will be between 2 and 4 homes together in a community like that. So those are the ones that are happening right now, and amongst everything else. The building for our township is proceeding, as you can tell over there. And we've had one really good thing happen, other than the weather almost stopped us there for a little while. But we were extremely concerned about our fuel station that was underground. So you never know what's down there until you take it out. But we couldn't take it out till we had the new one in, so the new one is in and functioning. And actually, I believe as of last Thursday, the tanks are out of the ground and everything was fine and refilled. So our project is proceeding reasonable. So if there's any other questions.
Is Municipal Road there, is that closed permanently then? That's now just a
Yes, it is.
dead-end road?
The
then?
road that you're seeing being cut in from Canal over to like where the buses are parked, that will become the permanent road there, and Municipal Road will not exist anymore as a thoroughfare, anyway. There'll be a cul-de-sac down there. I think there's only one house going to be on that road anymore, and I believe the name of the road is going to be renamed, but I don't know what it is. It's not coming to mind right now. They have chosen a name for it, but.
So we were real excited about seeing all those transformers being messed around with there next to Lidl. You don't know that that had anything to do with the store, or was
From
that?
the best of my knowledge, it did not. The electric, yeah, I know, I was hoping the same thing. I was like, does this mean they're doing something? But I don't think so. I think that had to do with all the poles. They were replacing a series of aged poles along 74, and whatever work was happening in that substation, I think, was related to that.
Well, you know that Lidl out there across from your college has been finished for, what, a year, 2 years? And there's nothing, it's just sitting there.
Yes, I'm
So
ready.
it makes me, I'm nervous about the whole thing.
Yep. I can't say, I honestly don't know, other than just hearsay. So I don't know if they bit off more than they can handle or what.
The development you mentioned off of Bull Road, where is that located on Bull Road?
Brook Drive comes out to Bull. I'm not a good one to describe where. It's a pretty large property right there at the corner of Bull and Brook. It sort of comes, which way would that be? Sort of goes north, I believe, there off of Brook Drive. And Buck McNaughton, I believe, is the people that are doing the work and the preparation and the planning for that.
Is that an extension of the over 50 community, or is that separate? Do you know?
No, I don't believe that's an extension. Right. Not that one. There is one other one that I don't know if some people heard about. It's called Copper Chase. And that's over off of Amig Mill, south. Actually, it's past one of our supervisors' farms right down there. It's actually towards the end of the Dover Township property, but that's being planned as an apartment complex for people that come and work in the hospital, because that property, I think, is only like 4.5 or 5 miles from the hospital. So it's intended to help satisfy their need for a place for people to live that are doctors and that are going to be working at the hospital.
Has there been any talk about, I think it was the Horn Farm there on Hilton and Bull, about developing that? And I mean, with the hospital coming in, that road is going to get a lot more traffic. Are there any plans on maybe trying to attract more commercial property to that area, or?
No, that one I haven't heard about, other than that the farm is there, right? But
Right.
I'm not aware of any movement in that one.
Is that whole plot commercial now? Is that all zone commercial? Or is it?
I'm probably not good to answer. I ought to check on that one before I would
Just
answer
curious.
that
I'm
for
just
sure.
curious. I just
Yeah.
think it'd be a good opportunity for us to
Yeah.
keep in mind.
I
with
know
the
we have a
hospital.
lot of property that is dedicated to the farming arena, and I'm not sure if that's one of them or not, but it could change. It could have, right?
It's been for sale for a
Long time.
long time.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions?
Anything else?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Stefanovic.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move on to the approval of our minutes. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the May 15th, 2018 board meeting.
So moved.
Bill. We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussions? Hearing none. Mrs. Benko? The motion carries. Next, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the May 17th, 2018 board planning meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussion? Hearing none. Mrs. Benko? There it goes. And the motion carries. Under Board President's communication, I did just want to announce that on June 14th, we did have a board planning retreat over at the high school to discuss goals and opportunities for the district and items related to that, including achievement throughout the district, diversity, as well as facilities. And then again, tonight we had an executive session prior to tonight's meeting to meet with Mrs. Kroom to provide her with her evaluation at this time, and the results of that will be posted publicly as required. And then we did also discuss some of the items that are on tonight's agenda. So with that, I will move on to the consent agenda for this evening. It's a rather lengthy agenda. I think we have 30-some items on that agenda tonight. So at this time, I would like to entertain a motion to approve all of the items listed under the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussion?
Number of items on the agenda related to personnel issues, hiring transfers, retirements, and so on and so forth. Just wanted to mention that, it's been a very busy month, with all the interviews and all the positions that we approved as part of the budget, with transfers, working all that out. Christina and her team has been very busy in interviewing and hiring and, coming with a rather lengthy list tonight. So thanks to everyone who's been involved in that process. Just wanted to give kind of a little bit of a shout out there. There's still more to do. We'll be coming, coming in front of us again next month, I'm sure. But a lot of work being done. Kids might not be here, but there's a lot happening. And just wanted to also mention item number 30 under the consent agenda with the bus routes. We had a discussion last month about some of the changes with the changing of the time frame at the intermediate school, some of the bus routes slightly changing a bit, but just wanted to publicly acknowledge that there's no cost increase to the district, but in case you see maybe a few buses on the same roads, one picking up high school, one picking up intermediate school, there might be a few changes like that. So if you get any questions about it, just know that there's no increased cost to the district as a result of that, and that's really being done for the benefit of the students moving forward. It's a decision that was made for their best interests. So just thought I would repeat that.
Tracy, I wondered if you could just, on 722, the agreement with York County Human Services, I know you shared with us about the benefit of having that for the district, and I just thought in light of a lot of things that happened in the district this year, it might be nice for people to hear.
This is an agreement with York County. It's a grant that we received that the intermediate school and high school are going to participate in this year. It is a grant that involves trauma-informed care, and when we talk about trauma of students, we don't necessarily mean big things. It could be ongoing things. It could be a student who lives in a home with a single parent. It could be a student who lives in a home with possibly a parent with a substance abuse, or a sibling who has a disability, but something that is traumatic in their life. And what this grant is going to allow us to do is we've identified 2 teams, one in the intermediate school, one in the high school, of teachers that we are going to train with strategies, and then they are going to also turn around and support other teachers in the building. This grant also will, these people will also come in and train the entire intermediate school staff and high school staff in January. So it is, we are really, really focusing after this year and what went on not only in our district but all over the country with violence and suicide and mental health. This is one way we are bringing our intermediate school and high school teachers, getting them more professional development. And this also is in response to the fact that our teachers are asking for this. We always ask them what professional development opportunities they would like to see, and this is the #1 request. Strategies and ways to help our kids who have emotional issues or are dealing with things at home or those kinds of things that we don't see. So we are really very excited about this grant, and we think it's going to do a lot for both of our secondary schools.
Any other questions?
Just refresh my memory, the Apple lease, I know we got a really good deal on making this change right now, but just out of curiosity, what was the outlay then of the additional cost in our budget for
Dom, did you want to
upgrading?
go ahead and discuss that?
Full-size iPads.
Yep.
We budgeted $280,000 for 3 years. And then we decided to go with keyboards at the high school. So it would be a keyboard attached to the iPad, and they could, easily take it apart just to use it without the keyboard. And we ended up going with a 4-year lease for $272,000 a year. And we're ready to resell the mini iPads, guaranteed $162,240 for the 2,260 working mini iPads. We're actually reselling, you got a obsolete list, 2,356 is our total. But there were some lost iPads in there that the students lost them, so they're still listed as obsolete. We just don't know where they are. They've been reported lost. So we are selling 2,343 iPads. The 2,260 are working, so that makes the $162,000 that we will get for those working iPads. I'm going to try to work out the ones that aren't working to get, it's a different grade. I may be able to get $25 each or something like that. So we should get a return of more than $162,000.
On those ones that were lost, what kind of responsibility or?
8 of the 13, we actually billed the parents $269. We have not, 8 of them, we have not received any money, and parents weren't too happy with being charged for a lost iPad. It's pretty brutal. Wasn't pleasant. Yeah. But those 8 students, I guarantee that they will not get a full-size iPad until they pay the bill. They may get a mini back to use for the school year, so they have technology, but they will not get a new, especially at high school. The cost if they lose it or get stolen is $428, not $269.
Thank you.
Additionally, I'd like to add that Apple came in on Thursday and worked with 60 of our staff members, a team from each building. We did training, and then the teams work with their principals, set up expectations for the students next year, expectations for the staff next year. These teachers were taught different apps and different ways to instruct using the iPads, and a full iPad rollout is planned in the fall where teachers will be expected to use the iPads in every single class. So we are expecting to roll out an entirely different experience next year from the very beginning. And I think we're really excited about it. The teachers were really excited about what they saw and really didn't realize what the iPad can do. Wouldn't you agree, Dom?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, it was a great training.
And Dom, will there be insurance that parents can buy on these iPads like they do with the Mini? And does that
Yes.
only cover breakage and not being stolen?
Another item we included was a case from AGI Repair. That's who does a lot of our repairs. As long as the iPad stays in that case and it has accidental damage, there's no cost to the school district to repair it or the parent.
That's just
It's
one-time
covered.
breakage, correct?
No, it's, I've talked to other school districts, and there's been times where an iPad was sent back twice or 3 times, and they didn't have any problem repairing it. One school district, I went to a meeting in October, they had a total of 8 iPads sent out for repair during that time, and Dover had close to 65 repairs.
We're
So this
currently-
case does
Sorry,
help.
we're currently looking at what we're going to be charging the parents for the insurance. I think that's more of what you were questioning. Looking at, I think last time we charged $35 for the insurance. We're looking at some other figures and seeing how we may be able to take a little bit of the burden off of the parents going forward, whether, if you have 3 kids or 4 kids, how can we minimize the burden on some of those parents?
We plan on lowering the cost of insurance by
The
$5.
insurance only covers the breakage, not for those kids who lost theirs.
A lost, stolen, you don't get any coverage at all. If it's lost or stolen, or, it's, or intentional damage, it has to be paid for. The plan is for the student to get a mini iPad. We'll have some spares until they pay for the repair of an iPad if they did not purchase insurance or, intentional damage.
Tom, is this a K-12 thing, and what grades actually take them home?
This is a 3rd to 12 will get full-size iPads, but in the elementary school, they'll stay at school, they don't leave the school. It's just 7 through 12 are able to take them home.
And I get the idea of if these students don't pay their bill, they don't get the full-size iPad. I guess my concern is, will that impede their education? If everybody else is using the full size and they need to have access to the same things and the minis aren't capable?
Right now, the only thing the Mini is not capable of doing is our assessments. If the student has to take assessments, they will be supplied a full-size iPad to do
In the
the
classroom?
assessments. Yes.
Okay.
It's
So
just
there
to
will
take
be
it home, they're not going
precautions. Okay,
they're not going to get a full-size iPad to use all day.
okay.
Not until they are responsible for the bill that they have to pay. But all accidental damage should be covered, and
Okay.
we shouldn't have to deal with that.
I guess too, I don't know, maybe this is just the mom in me, but is it the kid's fault if the parents won't pay? Because some of these kids can't come up with almost $300 to cover it.
Well,
So-
I have to say, I didn't personally talk to a parent, but the business department did, accounting, and it's the parent. It's not the student. I actually had a senior pay for it himself to graduate, so there are responsible kids out there. It's just a,
Right, so are we punishing the kids because of the parents? I guess is my concern.
Well, we have-
And I
I
get both
think-
sides of it, but,
I think as far as punishment, I think the student has to take some of the responsibility. I feel personally that students have to be taught also responsibility. And there's, majority of our students are good students and they're responsible. There's just a handful that,
I guess it's a case-by-case basis, because
Yes.
some would
And
be,
that- and that's how
it's
we-
the fault of the students and others may not be.
that's how we look at it
Right.
too. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mrs. Crew, so in grades 7 to 12, where they may take the iPad home, are they being assigned most of their homework on those machines?
They haven't been in the past, but they're going to start. They're going to have, teachers are going to have requirements to use it. So yes, yeah.
And that'll be pre-downloaded homework, correct? So if there's Wi-Fi issues, they can
Yes,
still
so what's
do-
nice about the iPad is you can download at school, do the work at home, even if you don't have any Wi-Fi, and then as soon as you hit the Wi-Fi in school, it uploads. That's part of why you go with iPads, why we went with iPads.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Hearing nothing else, Mrs. Benko. And the motion carries. Next, we'll move on to the Human and Fiscal Resources category. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the Act 93 agreement.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Benko? And the motion carries. Next, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the contract for the Director of Human Resources as per the enclosure.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Benko? And the motion carries. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call for an executive session if Mr. Pratt could join us. Okay, thank you, everybody. We will move on to our capital improvement steering committee budget voting items for tonight. So the first item that we have is the Live Elementary proposal that we had heard earlier. So at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the Live PTO proposal as per the enclosure.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussion? I will say, as a parent of a former Live Elementary student, I do think this is, while I choke at the dollars and the costs that are involved with this, that playground is in desperate need of some work. And I feel, in fairness to the students that attend that school, we owe it to them to have this. In today's world of wanting to encourage health and wellness, they need this opportunity to be out and have something to play on and work with. So I will be voting in favor of this this time. Anybody else have?
I share those sentiments of the cost, and why it's, I haven't ever actually priced anything or been around any of those. I mean, it's a reality check of what the costs actually are. But we keep asking ourselves, is this in the best interest of the kids, and why are we doing what we're doing? And I think I can rationalize it that it certainly is in the best interest of the kids there. So from that standpoint.
Right, I think it's a good start. I think, any future additions, possibly looking into other funding resources, but I think it's a good start and that, it is for the kids.
Yep.
Anybody else?
I just want to commend the PTO too for doing a great job. That's a good chunk of money. I'm trying to help raise money for the $15,000 swings a few years ago. I know what tough work that is, so my kudos go out to you guys too.
I still tear box tops off out of habit, and I don't know what to do with them. I'll send them over to you, Mary Kay. All right, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, Mrs. Benko.
I apologize. I'm going to have to ask you to vote again.
I'd like to entertain a motion to get Mrs. Benko a new computer.
I don't think it's the computer. You should be able to vote.
And the motion carries. Okay, next up is a presentation from our friends at Crabtree.
Okay, so it's been a long journey to get here. We've been talking about this day of when we're going to receive bids for a while now, and we did. You can go to the next slide. And I'm happy to report that, I'll just skip to the bottom, the good news here. With our base bids of all the prime contractors, we're just over $500,000 under budget, which represents about 1% under budget. Going down through each prime contractor, the general contractor was under budget. The HVAC, plumbing, electrical contractors were under budget. Where we were over budget was the site contractor. And although we are under budget overall, we are working with the site contractor on what we call a post-bid assessment. That's a clause in our documents that allows us to evaluate cost savings items with the apparent low bidder, which is York Excavating. So we've been working with them through that exercise, and you'll see later in the presentation where we think we can save some additional money over and top their bids, even though overall we're over budget. We wanted to evaluate that. So anytime you have questions throughout, there's going to be a lot of information here, so just stop me and ask questions throughout, or you can wait till the end. Next slide.
Quick
Sure.
question right
Go
off
ahead.
the top.
Yep.
Looking at that cost per square foot, can you give us an idea as to where that stands related to recent building projects throughout the state in comparison to other projects
Sure.
of this magnitude?
Actually, PD publishes, what did you say, every?
Report 30.
Report 30, but it
All new
comes out,
construction.
yeah, for any project that's all new construction, that'll come out, roughly 2 years after. But you'll probably see here that the $171 per square foot is probably going to be one of the lowest cost schools, even working back to last year. We're seeing schools from competitors come in well over 200 in the 250s, all the way up to I think one came in at 280 for high schools recently. So this is a very cost-effective school. I want to commend your administration, especially. We've, as we've gone throughout this whole process, we've always kept our eye on the budget, and we've kind of readjusted. If you remember early on, we talked about square footage adjustments and true needs, and we've talked about when we were getting some inklings of the site being a little bit over what we thought it would be, we reevaluated things in the building, and Dave and his team reevaluated materials and different things to help keep it on budget. But you'll see when you compare it to that report 30, and that's something we can provide for the board of the schools that over the past couple of years, it's going to be one of the lowest costs.
I believe in 2016, the last report, the state average was about $205 a square foot. So what the state does is for all new construction, they isolate the 4 prime contracts. They exclude site because all the sites are different. So it's really an apples to apples comparison of the building structure cost. So even by 2016 standards, the state average was already almost $30 a square foot above what these bids were received at. So these are great numbers.
Thank you.
One of the other things we're going to review tonight is the alternates. We talked prior at a prior board meeting about the reason we have alternates. There might be an add alternate where there's a definite need where we don't think the budget can support it, but if we do get good numbers, we'll have it in there so that we have the opportunity to take it. And also there was a series of deduct alternates when we were hearing things of steel prices increasing and just overall contractors getting busy. We wanted to kind of hedge our bet and put some deducts in there. And the administration and some of the steering committee members reviewed all these alternates and did come up with a recommended list. I'm not going to go through each one of them. We can talk about any of them if you want to, but we're going to hit some of the highlights. But you'll see there the general construction is actually a deduct of $391,000 with the selected alternates. The site construction is an add of $1 million. The HVAC is a deduct of $400,000, plumbing a deduct of $83,000, and the electrical construction an add of $348,000. And I'll talk about just a few of the larger ones. But you can see here, this is where we were at with the low base bid and where we're at with the selected alternates. And one of the alternates, just there's a little disclaimer here. We did a deduct alternate to purchase certain shop furniture through state contract. Sometimes that ends up being less expensive, and we actually realized a $40,000 savings by purchasing through state contract rather than having the contractor install it. So that's $198,000 that came out of a deduct up here, but we're going to add it back in the overall budget, and you'll see that later on in a later slide. Yes.
Question. On the alternates, the companies that bid these projects, I'm assuming, also bid the alternates,
Correct.
That's how you know.
Yep. So each
If-
prime contractor will have their list of alternates. And actually, you'll see here, this next disclaimer here was for the HVAC construction. The actual low bid HVAC contractor changed with the selection of alternates. So it was Myco Mechanical that had the low base bid, but once you combined the alternates of where they had pricing for each of the alternates, they were different enough that the low bid contractor after the alternates was a different contractor, Matchline.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yes.
Like, you're obligated to go with the package deal, then you can't pick and choose who the low
Right.
price
No,
all
it's
the way along it would
strictly
be.
low bid of whatever base bid plus your alternates.
Okay.
Any other questions on the overview of the alternates? So, wanted to get into a couple of the larger alternates. We talked about this before. One of the alternates that we do is unclassified construction, and what that means is the way the base bid works is as they're excavating, whether it be for footings or electrical lines or just bulk excavation around the site, whatever rock they hit or unsuitable soils would be paid for via unit price. So there'll be unit price established, and then if you do hit rock, you'll pay for that via change order via that unit price. This alternate is to basically put the onus on the contractor and go and basically say any rock or unsuitable soils that you hit within the building footprint or any rock throughout the site will be on them to absorb within their bid, within this alternate price. These were actually considering the amount of earthwork that happens on this site. You'll see that the site contractor, of course, has the largest number here. They have the most exposure. But with the amount of earthwork that happens throughout the site and throughout this project on both the high school site and the elementary school site, we basically recommend that all these unclassified alternates get chosen and selected. We're actually working on an elementary school currently with another district that is already over $1 million in rock, and that's just on a small elementary addition.
So this limits the board's exposure.
Yeah.
By accepting this alternate, that is the maximum that you can pay for the rock excavation. It shifts the risk to the contractors as opposed to Scott's earlier unit price. You pay as you go, and that number could be exceeded significantly. So it's a risk issue. So this is a protective alternate, if you will.
And so that's the max that we would have to pay. So it's possible, though, that we wouldn't even have to pay what's up there, correct?
Well, no, this would be by accepting this alternate, you're essentially paying that
Agreeing to
much.
pay that.
And anything, regardless, and anything above that would be on the contractor to absorb. And I'll show you later on the presentation, but one of the things we have a contingency for is earthwork. So by taking this, we had, I think, a $1.2 or $1.1 million contingency. This will allow us to back off that contingency a little bit, and you're essentially putting contingency into this alternate. Any questions on that? One of the other, if you look through the whole list of alternates, one of the biggest things that was identified at the beginning of the project as a need was a synthetic turf field, and I'm going to let the district talk about it a little bit before, but I'll give kind of an overview. One of the things on the site with how tight it was with parking and things like that, we actually lose a field, and as you know now, you're already pretty jam-packed, and the benefits of a multi-purpose field, you can see there all the people that will be using it and playing on it. But there's two components to this alternate bid. One was for the site contractor to do the actual turf field itself, so that's the turf field, the under drainage, and all the associated components of that. And then a separate one for the electrical contractor to do the lighting. And I'll turn it over to who wants to speak, the team, to talk about the need.
Okay. This is something I think we, and I think Rich and Jared will both agree on this. Synthetic turf on this field is almost a necessity. If we're going to use this field for gym classes, we're going to use it for soccer, we're going to use it for field hockey, we're going to use it for lacrosse. If we put grass in here, you can take just what I said, and we're going to use one sport on it, and that's it. If you remember back to when we had the football field in grass, mid-season, it was mud. And that's what, if we try to do this in natural grass, that's what we're going to end up with. Synthetic turf, we can play back-to-back practices, games, without any damage to the field, without any field prep, without doing anything to the field. We can play on it 5 minutes after it quits raining, and it's, other than the fact it might be a little wet, it's not going to be puddles on it. It's not going to, it's not going to really adversely affect the game. It's much cheaper than grass. We're not going to have to seed it. We don't have to fertilize it. It's got a lot of multitude of benefits. Our current turf field at the high school is in 9 years. I think I'm right on that.
Yes.
And we have done very little maintenance as far as things that cost us money on it. Every year we used to do it every other year. I started doing it every year now that the field's getting a little bit older, but we come in and we do a grooming on it. And what we do is we try and get anything out that's in it. And we found out that, kids have bobby pins and safety pins, and we actually found starter
money
shells in it from the starter pistols, the little brass casings. We find them in it. We find money in it. We find earrings. We find all kinds of stuff in it. So we go in there and we get all that out once a year, kind of fluff up the turf. If we have to add any crumb rubber, we had to do that once since we had the field. We do that. And then we do something on it called a GMAX test. And we do that GMAX test every year religiously. And what the GMAX test tells you is how hard is your field. So there's an optimum range. You want to keep it under 100. You want, you don't want to get it too much above 110. When you get to about 120, you got to do something. So what GMAX, what you're really trying to do is give it a cushion when somebody falls on it. If you have natural grass, we have no control over the GMAX. And if you think about it, you go out there right now and fall on the ground, it's not too bad. If that ground's frozen, it's like concrete. You never get that with athletic turf. With your turf field, it doesn't matter if it's snowing and it's 5 degrees out there, it's just like it is today. It's not any harder, it's not any softer. So I know there was some concern about injuries on a turf field, and I'm going to let Rich talk about that because he has a whole lot more background on that than I do. So I can talk about maintenance on it all day, but so.
I'm going to jump in before, because one other thing we need to think about, and honestly for me, this is one of the things when we started this project that stood out, like, really, is this where we have to go? We do. And I say that because if you look at the way we use the field right now, our PE classes go out to our stadium every single day up until like 38 degrees or down to. But when you're talking about a grass surface, I can speak from the experience of having been at my previous administrative placement. We had 7 fields in rotation, all grass. We needed all 7 to run PE plus athletics, because what we found is if you got one wet day and the PE classes went out for 4 straight periods and worked on that field, and then an hour later you had sports teams from 3 to 9, that surface turned to concrete almost immediately. It was hard, it was almost impossible to use. We weren't even able to touch our grass field in our stadium, because if we did, we had to reseed it 3 times a year. And the cost was exorbitant. And for me, as we look at the new facility, we're going to be losing the one field that the IS currently uses to the front side right now for their PE courses. This is really the only outside facility besides baseball that we will have available for our students in physical education to go outside to. And my concern from an educational programming side is if we have to start getting in the game where Rich and I have to balance out, well, we can't send PE out for 2 weeks because we just aerated the field, we just reseeded, we have to wait, we're going to be putting our educational program in danger in terms of physical education. So it's not just a safety concern for us. There's a huge educational component that we gain from this, with the ability to use our field from 7 o'clock in the morning until 9 or 10 o'clock at night without doing damage to that field surface. I know you're hitting injuries.
I'm really going to date myself now, though. But anyway, I've been here since '95, and for 13 years I've worked as the athletic trainer, strictly athletic trainer for 10 years, and athletic trainer assistant AD for 3 years, and then since then I've been the athletic director. I was never happier in my life than when I found out we were getting the turf stadium. They're exactly right in what Dave was saying about maintenance on a grass field, and when it gets that much play, pockmarked from spikes. Back in '95 and up until we got the new turf field, our senior nights, because when I first came here we didn't even have lights. We played Saturday afternoon football games. back then. But anyway, when the senior nights would come around, when we got the lights, everybody would want to play underneath the lights. Well, it had so much football play on that it actually became very dangerous for a sport like field hockey to play on that field. I bet you out of the 6 or 7 senior night field hockey games that I worked as an athletic trainer for, I sent somebody to the hospital for a laceration to the face probably at least 5 times because of the pock marks and the balls not staying down on a flat surface and coming up as soon as somebody hits one, it would go right to their face and cut them. So it got to the point where I said no more senior night field hockey games on the grass field, and a big banner went up in Dover that I was unfair, but it was strictly an injury prevention type decision that we made. And now that we're losing the field hockey grass field that we play on now is just used for field hockey in the fall, so it can be maintained, cut, and we don't get pockmarked except in the goal crease areas where you get heavy traffic. Differences in artificial turf that, yes, the old generation turf fields that you guys probably remember, like the Astrodome, AstroTurf. Dave was talking about that was put in as a more novelty thing, less maintenance type field for an indoor field. There's 2 things that cause injury, and yes, those fields were very dangerous and did cause more injuries than grass. You get the coefficient of friction and the coefficient of resistance. His resistance is the Gmax. That's the amount of shock absorption that you get. That's what you get with these new generation type fields, which we have in our stadium. And then the coefficient of friction is the ability of the turf or the surface to move when your foot is on top of it. So if you would come out here and stick your foot, this would not move. This would be more like the old style AstroTurf that was in the Astrodome, like this carpeted type area. Yes, absolutely. You're going to have more ankle sprains. You're going to have more ACL tears. You're going to have more concussions from your head hitting that hard ground. Back then. Now the turf is made to give with the rubber infill. If you go onto a turf field and put your foot on and turn your foot, you'll feel that it gives. It feels a lot like natural grass. So the new generation turf fields, there really isn't, in my seeing with Dave, our athletic trainer, and talking to him, he hasn't seen an increase in injuries. Of course, your broken arms and stuff like that, that's going to happen on grass or turf. That's not going to be an issue. It's more of your non-contact rotation forces for like knee injuries, ACL injuries, ankle injuries, and foot injuries and lower extremity injuries. I saw more of on grass when it got pockmarked and used, and then played on wet and then dried out, and then you'd have a hole where somebody stuck their foot. We had definitely more ankle sprains on stuff like that. Turf, it's even play all the way around all the time. When it's wet, it's not slippery. You can play in the middle of a downpour, and you won't slip on that turf. I could talk about other advantages, but they've already talked about it. The playing time advantage, you're going to get 3,000 hours. I just pulled up a study. You're going to get about 3,000 hours of play per year on a turf field without any rest, and you may get 680 to 800 on a grass field, and that's going to require rest in between play. The maintenance concerns, which Dave talked about, your reinvestment on your or your return on your investment will be probably paid for, and as far as man hours and paint. This study says 3 to 4 years, including another field. That's including another field replacement, including one replacement field. The cost of installing and maintaining a synthetic turf field over a 20-year period, including one replacement field, is over 3 times less expensive per event than the cost of a grass field. So that's where you're going to get your return on your investment with the turf field, is the man hours and the time saved mowing and lining the fields. The final statement on this one study, I have said hundreds of studies have shown that the risk of injury is no different on high-quality synthetic turf fields and natural grass fields. So, for the advantages that you get as opposed to the injury advantages, which are slim to none, I think it's a no-brainer, like these guys have said.
And to add to what Rich just said, as you can tell, we've done some research to see where we're at. A lot of the research in the last 5 years has taken a very different turn than what you may have seen a decade ago, where it was turf field, synthetic turf is dangerous because They are all shifting the other direction now. And what we're finding when you look at this research in particular, the bigger threat to an athlete is actually when they are playing on a grass surface versus a turf surface back and forth, not in practice, but when their game surface changes between one type of field and another on a repetitive basis. Because what Rich was talking about, that change in your plant, that change in the way in which your motion works, happens. And right now, because we only have that one access point, our boys, girls soccer teams, our field hockey teams are doing that. They're playing on our own home field on two different surfaces in different games. And honestly, most of the places we travel, I can't think of many, if any, that we go to that don't play on a turf surface. There are a few here in between.
It's probably 50-50 at this point.
And when you're looking at our kids, I also look at equity. Our boys and girls lacrosse kids have been a part of our program for now 2 years. They've never gotten to play a game at home on turf, and we can't paint the turf field right now. Those extra lines will make that thing almost unreadable for any sport because we've got so many already. But to have a program that's trying to grow itself and say that you're the one sport that doesn't have access to the same type of facility as your peers is very hard for us from a school perspective. This is an opportunity to not only provide that equity, but also provide that safety factor that we know we can provide to our kids.
So I have a couple questions. So I have two kids who played lacrosse in high school and one boy who played soccer at the intermediate school. And yes, they absolutely could have benefited from using the turf. And that's been a question of mine all along. Why can't we paint the existing stadium to house all those sports? Because I know like Spring Grove does. They have their lacrosse teams, their field hockey, their boys and girls soccer. They all play on their one main turf field. So it is doable. They figure out the lines. I guess one of my questions is, if we're talking almost $1 million here, why not consider the idea of using our current turf field for all the sports and not building another turf field?
The problem with the spring sports is we have our track at the high school, and they practice every day after school on that track. So there's no, right now we do bring a junior high soccer team over to practice with track, which probably isn't the safest thing with balls rolling across the track when we have track runners running, but somehow they work it out. Track practice usually goes 5 to 5, 5 or 5:30. I'm not quite sure when we play games after school or even start games at 5:30. If we're going to start games later than that, we're going to get really late into the night playing on that field all by itself. Plus, we're losing the field at the intermediate school, so gaining a multi-purpose field that's going to take all these sporting events on is going to be just a complete benefit for everybody involved. Boys and girls lacrosse, as you know, the crease area gets very, very, very heavy traffic. That's also in the same vicinity as our goal areas for soccer and our goal areas for field hockey. So those areas of the turf are going to receive an awful lot of wear and tear. Now you're looking at one field where you're playing all your games and having all your practices and playing all your football games, all levels of football games, 7 through 12, because we don't have goalposts or another football field. So you're also playing 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, JV, varsity football. We have just about every sport, outside sport, other than junior high track, we offer here at Dover, and water polo and bowling, I think. But, we offer just about every outdoor sport. And it's very hard now to get everybody on. I'm right now, I have six girls soccer games, 6 field hockey games, and 5 boys soccer games on our turf field this year, and it's still not enough. I'm still having to use a makeshift multi-purpose field that we're putting in behind North Salem to get junior high field hockey games in, and a few single boys, girls soccer, and field hockey games that we're going to have to play on regular grass this year just to get them all in.
Is that partly because isn't girls soccer moving to fall instead of spring, or was it always?
It already has. Yeah, the boys and girls soccer are in the fall. Boys and girls junior high soccer are in the spring.
And so, with the addition of a second turf field, right now we have where the junior high boys play their home games, and we also have where the lacrosse field is. So you're saying we're now only going to have one field over there.
Yeah.
And so, is that even going to be enough to house all
We're
of
going to
those
have to
kids?
play. We're going to have to play in the spring. We're going to have to play our soccer games over on the multi-purpose field behind North Salem on the grass. Our junior high soccer games.
This is once the new building is done, you're
Yes.
saying? So the junior high will not benefit from the turf, but the high school will?
I don't want to say never. We have played a junior high field hockey game on there before because of weather, and we couldn't get it in that day, and the turf just happened to be open. So with 2 turf fields, there's obviously an opportunity for junior high to get a chance to be on it at some point. Obviously, our senior high sports would take precedence, you know, if it was a same-day type deal. But with 2 turf fields, there may be a chance to get them on at some point. In the spring, the only teams that will be using it in the spring would be boys and girls lacrosse. So there will be an opportunity to get at least some practice time and other times on the turf for some junior high soccer programs. But in the fall, it's very, very busy with boys and girls soccer. Right now, we're with the building project. We're going to be using Lair Park. We're going to be using a makeshift field in front of North Salem. Dave's putting the multi-purpose field in, grass field behind North Salem, and we're using the stadium. And I had a meeting with my coaches yesterday, and we went through every single day, and it is packed. So we get rain, it's going to be a serious issue, but you know, we'll work it out.
Or snow like we had with lacrosse this year.
Well, any bad weather is a problem, but and back when we did it, you know, I had talked to Dr. Krantz back when we put the first turf field in. I said, you know, now's our chance to put another one in. A lot of schools do too, right out of the gate, because but it never got to that point. And now with the new high school going in, we have a great opportunity. And Mr. Wassler is correct that turf is used pretty heavily during the school day as a teaching space for our physical education kids.
I know Chuck DeLatter wasn't here tonight, but one of his concerns was the rate of injuries on the turf field. And I've heard some of the same, especially with lower extremity injuries, that they're definitely increasing.
And I think you're probably looking at earlier studies from the older generation type turf fields. Honestly, the new generation fields, with the way they're made, with the infill and the way they're tested, I'll speak from experience. Our last ACL, I talked to trainer Dave before we came in. Our last ACL was done on natural grass on a soccer player. Dave tore his ACL on natural grass. I tore mine on natural grass. So are you not going to tear them on a turf field? Absolutely not. It's impossible to say that. But I don't think that your risk is any greater with the new generation type turf, with the infill and the coefficient of friction, with your foot giving. You know, if I come in here and stop and turn around real fast, that's how you tear your ACL. It's usually a non-contact type rotation on your knee. It's not from somebody hitting your knee that you tear your ACL, unless you're Carson Wentz. But yeah, the manufacturing of turf fields, and Scott can probably agree, has come from here to through the roof in the last probably 10 years.
Well, and I think it's important to point out, because one of the things we looked at was the Penn State Department of Agri-Science has an entire list of all the studies that are kind of the predominant studies that are out there for people to work from. And if you look, almost every study that talks about an increased rate of injury is in relation to professional athletes, where the speed of the game, the power of that game, is at a whole different level than a 16-year-old kid. When you're talking about our training staff, we're also very fortunate to have a group of people that work very hard on conditioning our students to understand their body. We're not training football players that are super heavy up top and have no leg strength, which is where the injuries come from. They're working very hard to develop an athlete, but it's also that speed of the game is consistently one of the factors you see in those studies that comes back. When you're playing that rapid speed, if you've got a 350-pound guy bearing down on you that quick who's trained to do it, your impact on that ground is going to be a lot different than our kids doing that.
And you are seeing more and more professional stadiums now going to the artificial turf, and even probably colleges more so than professional stadiums for lots of reasons. But I don't think kids on full scholarships and multi-million-dollar professional athletes are going to be putting artificial turf fields in if they think there's going to be a serious issue with a multi-million-dollar athlete going down for an injury because of turf.
Being in this kind of the maintenance side with my job, I know the challenges that you face with trying to keep fields up and, grass fields up and running. The challenges that you run into are, when you need to be doing the maintenance part of it, there's usually teams using the field. So you're usually limited to, seeding and doing it when in the off seasons, which oftentimes is not the ideal time to be doing it in the first place. So one of the challenges is if you don't have enough fields that you can take fields out of use and let them recover, you're constantly fighting an uphill battle to try to keep them playable. And knowing that that's the case, knowing that we're already at a premium for these fields and losing a field, it seems to me that it would make the most sense if the concern for injury is alleviated.
And a great example of what you just said is the 2 practice fields at the high school. Do you remember the kind of the shape they've been in years past from all the rain and overuse that they've got through practices? I mean, if you look at them now, I mean, obviously in the middle of the summer they could, get dried out a little bit. But if you look at them now, they're plush. I mean, they're really nice practice fields.
They definitely, I think that's been one of the side benefits of having an athletic field that is turf right now. It takes some of the stress off of the outlying fields. What is the lifespan, the expected lifespan of a turf field, and how is the stadium field right now? If we did a second field, it stands to reason that would extend the life of the current field, would it
Right,
not?
yeah, it would. The stadium field right now is in its 9th year. I talked to the guy doing the cleaning yesterday, and his words to me were, this thing looks great for 9 years. I don't think AstroTurf, back when we put it in, was a new manufacturer of turf, and they really didn't have. We were the very first field in the county to put AstroTurf down. They didn't have any studies out on how long their fields lasted, and there was very few studies out back when we put that field in relation to any other manufacturer fields because they were so new at that time. But he told me easily another 5 or 6 years with the way our field's wearing. The only thing that's happening now is, and we'll get our GMAX Force tests back probably within the week.
Next week.
But he didn't see any issues. The only thing that's happening is the grass fibers, or like a nylon fiber or a poly fiber, they start to break down over years with cleats getting on them and they tear. So you get we had a lot of like loose grass laying on top of the turf, which is now cleaned off, of course. But that's the thing that we're starting to see now is some of the fibers starting to break down after 10 years. But I'm telling you, that thing gets used hard. There's very few days in the fall that there is not a game or a practice or several practices on that single field. Also, 4 gym classes a day on it. So, and we talk to our coaches, and the big thing is moving your drills around and not doing the same drill in the same part of the field every single day. And they're pretty good about that, but it has been, I'm very impressed with the wear and tear and what it has endured and the shape that it's in. I don't think he didn't say anything to me about any torn seams, anything coming up. I walk it, grab it, pull it up. I mean, there's nothing even loose on it. So, knock on wood, it's been a great product. And that actually, AstroTurf was bought out by CSG. So that would be a company that we could look at if we want the same quality field for a new turf field.
So you're making the case there that you've obviously put a lot of thought into this. What is your envision for that field?
My envision, if the electrical bid goes through with it, is to probably host many more night events over there. It's going to be fenced in, which enables us to charge admittance to the game, which will enable us to run. We could run really 2 events, 2 home, a field hockey night game and a soccer night game at the stadium we currently have and at the new stadium that would be at the new high school. Fenced in, as we have both fields, would allow us to host county, district, and state events. Our baseball field will now be fenced in as well, so we can host playoffs, postseason games in baseball as well. So it would be another way to make some more money on ticket sales.
Bleachers? I mean,
It's going to be, the way I see it, it's going to be like a small stadium. Like
Mobile.
It's not going to be like permanent, like stadium bleachers that we have now, but if you look at something like Central York soccer field, maybe like,
We have, whether, regardless of which way the field goes, we have a kind of a stone dust area that allow you to put your portable bleachers there that district already owns.
so it's not, at this point, we have a sound system?
Mm-hmm.
So it's my understanding there's also going to be a sound system, so that would allow us to host those night games and play the anthem and announce the game. So
So
it would be
non-football though, correct? Or
it will not be lined for football. Football will be strictly at the stadium that we have now.
Yeah. Band will be able to use it for band practices.
Either field, yeah.
Either field. You know, so if they want to do something different in the summer and they want to go half and half, or they want to go out there and use that when they can.
I would think they would need it to be lined for football, would they not? If they're using the football field as
Well, they could use the old stadium that is lined for football. I mean, I think they have yard markers they can put out, but I mean, it's probably not exactly, if they use the hashes and stuff for their formations and stuff, it's probably not going to be perfect. But no, that field would not be lined for football. It would be useless to line it for football.
A while back when I was still in band director mode, we did not have a football lined multi-purpose field. We actually used a soccer field. What the kids learned was their spacing, but they still put the yard markers up, so they learned how to march it off. The other thing is we still have the parking lot, correct, lined? So the parking lot right there adjacent is also lined. That's where the football lines are actually there for marching band practice, specifically is in that lined parking lot as a dry surface. But they could potentially use the stadium, it wouldn't have that nice, like Rich said, it wouldn't have those nice yard markers, hash marks, front sideline. You just kind of have your lines and work off your spacing.
An electrical contractor bid, that would cover the lighting and the sound system on that. So it would be a sound system similar, much better, but similar to what the current stadium has. Good.
One last thing about that number, as with all the alternates, that it's probably relevant to point out, as Scott mentioned, because this is an alternate work being performed by the contractors on site, the site contractor and the electrical contractor, it is a good cost. There is equity by doing that as part of a larger project. If you were to consider, can it be done at a later point, bid as a separate project, you should be prepared to probably spend about 10 to 15% at a minimum to have an outside contractor independent to come in later. So the cost, there's equity when these items are combined with contractors that are already on site.
Yeah, actually, we spoke to York about that specific thing, and they basically said it would probably be double the cost because you're remobilizing, digging up the field, you're having to put the under drainage in, the concrete curbing in, not to account for any escalation in the future where you would bid it. But a couple other items to note on that real quick. Just so you know, any alternate that is not chosen at this time, you don't have an option to choose it later on during construction. PD basically says once you make your selection of alternates, that's it. So if there's anything that you would want to add or you can't do it at a later point, you have to do it when you award bids. And so this is kind of a summary, of the budget. As you remember, the budget is at $65 million. And of course, the construction budget is just a portion of that. So here's our $56.4 million construction budget. So here's our estimated around $100,000 in savings. We're probably a little bit more than that. This is kind of a moving target, but the savings that we do via the site contract will be done via change order after award of the bids. And then with the recommended alternates, that brings us to a subtotal of the construction costs of $56.2 million, which is still $161,000 under budget. Once again, we have to add that state contract furniture back in, kind of below the line, so we add that back in here. This is what I talked about before with when you're doing the all of the unclassified construction alternates, you can bring down your contingency. So we were still conservative in this. This is only bringing it down to so that contingency is right about 1.75% or $1 million. So you still have $1 million pot sitting there to handle any issues that come up during construction. Another realized savings, we've always carried about $1 million for financing fees with RBC had in their final Part G documents that you have for also approval in front of you. That financing fees were just shy of $900,000, so there's some savings there. So that brings the total net amount under budget, and that's, once again, this is with accepting that turf field alternate. So I think circling back around at the beginning, I talked about, at the beginning of the project, we talk about need and things that are needed as a part of the project. The reason the turf field was an alternate was because we didn't think it would fit the budget. Here we are realizing that not only can it fit the budget, but you can do the turf field and still be just shy of $200,000 to the good of the overall project budget. Are there any questions on any of the other alternates or any of the alternates that we've discussed? Okay. So one of the items for approval is the PlanCon F Attachment C document. That's basically just a statement of what happened post-bid. It's just a one-page report that lists the alternates that you're planning on choosing. Did the bids come in? Were they under budget? It also has language about the site post-bid assessment that we're going through, and that's one of the documents in your packet. PlanCon G is kind of a revisit of your Part D project costs. Now that we have bids, actual real dollars, those are put back into some of the same formulas that you saw in the Part D document that you previously approved. And it updates also the financing model, so you see that throughout the document. And then each contractor certifies their bid as far as the cost of their bid and bid breakouts as far as the natatorium bid breakout and some site costs of the way PDE likes to look at reimbursement and breaks down the formula. And then it revisits the Act 34 limits, so it looks at what was your Act 34 limit that was approved as part of your hearing, and where are you at with that? We're actually, of course, we're under budget, so we're well under the Act 34 limit, and that checks off as well. Anything you want to add there?
In terms of timing and sequencing, the significance of these two documents allow these applications to go to the Department of Education for approval, and then upon the state's approval, that then allows the board to execute contracts for construction. So they are significant in terms of the overall sequence and the next major milestone for approval from the state.
So any questions on anything we covered or anything we didn't cover?
I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment. You never know what you're getting into when you go out for a project like this, and this is new to most of us that are sitting up here. I would just have to commend you, gentlemen, and your team for the very realistic numbers that you've been presenting to us and the realistic approach, and to have the bids come in and to be able to do a few extra things on top of that and still be under budget is almost mind-blowing to me. So I think it's a testament to the reality and the experience that you have, and to present something and work with us to give us a very realistic picture in light of somewhat of an uncertain future and economy right now. So thank you for your work in getting us to this point.
Sure. And that was I'll say that was a team effort. You have a fantastic administration here. Anytime we came to them and said, hey, we think we're going a little bit beyond our budget, can we revisit some things? They were very diligent and really thoughtful of every decision they made. So that's a testament to your staff as well.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Okay. With that, I would like to entertain a motion at this time to approve the Dover Area High School PlanCon Part F Attachment C as per the enclosure.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Benko?
Oh, sorry. Hold on 1 minute.
And the motion carries. Okay, bear with me if I read this very long motion. At this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to award the bids for the Dover Area High School project to the lowest responsible bidders identified below, and authorize Crabtree, Rohrbaugh, and Associates to issue letters of intent to award, generate construction contracts, and issue notices to proceed contingent upon Plan Con Part F and Part G approvals by the Pennsylvania Department of Education and necessary approvals from applicable agencies. Number 1, general construction contract to Lobar Inc., including alternates GC1, GC3, GC5, GC7, and GC13. Number 2, site construction contract to York Excavating Company, LLC, including alternates SC1, SC2, and SC4. Number 3, HVAC construction contract to Matchline Mechanical, LLC, including alternates HC1, HC5, HC7, HC8, and HC9. Number 4, plumbing construction contract to Myco Mechanical, Inc., including alternates PC1, PC2, and PC5. And number 5, electrical construction contract to Lobar Inc., including alternates EC1, EC2, EC3, EC6, EC7, EC11, EC13, and EC14.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions or discussion? I would like to read something to you that Mr. DeLauder provided to the board. We already brought up his concern related to the safety, and I think that was well addressed by our team here. So I would like to read the following to you. It says, I know several of you have concerns with the cost of the project and the impact it will have on our residents. I have those concerns as well. With that said, I must ask, if we don't agree to move forward with this project, what is our plan B? We all recognize that the intermediate school is in desperate need of upgrades and expansion. We saw what the projected cost of that renovation would be. We cannot continue to put Band-Aids on that building and expect everything to remain functional. Additionally, since we started exploring this project over 2 years ago, we have seen an increase of several $1 million through nothing more than interest rate and building cost increases. If we continue to wait, these costs are only going to increase. I personally believe we are getting a lot of building for the money and want to commend the architects and the planning committee for their hard work. For those of you who have questioned different aspects of this project, I ask you this question. Do you believe this building meets our programmatic needs? If the answer is yes, then I would ask you to consider putting your personal feelings aside and approve the project to ensure our students, both present and future, have a building that is safe and conducive to learning. I truly enjoy working with each and every one of you. I know this is a big decision that will have a lasting impact on our students and residents. If I were in attendance, I would cast an affirmative vote on this project. I know you all will vote on what you feel is in the best interest of our students and our residents, and I will support each of you in your decision. And that was from, again, Mr. DeLauder. I would like to echo a lot of what Mr. DeLauder said in his email. Having gone through this process for many moons now, I would like to also echo what Mr. Cook just said a few moments ago. I think it's incredible in today's world that this project came in under budget. You know, I know Mrs. Benko is starting to have heart palpitations over steel costs and where they were headed with the new tariffs and everything. So seeing those bids come in under budget is a huge testament to the work of you and your firm, as well as our team here within the district. I think that's just commendable to see that. And I'm proud to support something that comes in under budget, and I'd be really proud to support it when it comes in on time, too. So with that, that's all I'll have to say. Does anybody else want to add anything to this? Okay. Hearing none, Mrs. Benko. And the motion carries. Start digging. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the Dover Area High School Plan Con Part G document as per the enclosure.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Benko? And the motion carries. Okay, moving on. Dover Eagle Foundation, I do not have anything to report on that tonight. Mrs. Kroom, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
We have meetings scheduled on July 17th to talk about the future of Dover Eagle Foundation.
York Adams Academy, Mr. Emig.
Graduation was held June the 4th with 78 students. To date, York Adams Academy graduated 3,950. And I want to thank Dr. Maloney and Mrs. Strasball for being in attendance that night as well. And just to give you and we had 5 graduates from Dover that made that accomplishment. And as I had said before, Dr. Pianowski from the Eastern School District is retiring from her position at Eastern and also as the Superintendent of Record of York Adams Academy. And Dr. Snell from Central will be taking over the realm after we meet after the summer break.
Any questions for Mr. Emig? Okay, York County School of Technology, Mr. DeLauder is not with us tonight. Mrs. Kroom, did you have anything to cover there? Okay. LIU Special Education, Mr. Deschaux?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, Legislative, Mr. Rawhauser?
Nothing I'm aware of.
All right. York Learning Center, Mr. Rawhauser?
The only thing to report is we had to negotiate a new contract for custodial service because they said they wouldn't work after the first of the month because they lost money, he said, for the last couple of years, and nobody else bid except one. So that kind of narrowed it down, and will be no additional cost to the school districts. We can work it in through the budget.
Questions for Mr. Rawhauser? Okay, PSBA, Mrs. Brinton.
Just there are a few pieces of legislation that I'm sure you've seen in the email blasts that they're saying to keep an eye on. Senate Bill 2, which is the voucher program legislation. There's a Keystone exam, Senate Bill 10, well, no, it's 1082 or 1038. And I think that was it that I had. And of course, there is the our conference in, is that October, Nate?
Yes, October.
Yeah, October.
Questions for Mrs. Brinton? Okay, Dover Industrial Development Committee, Mrs. Herman.
Mr. Benton's going to give the report.
The committee for the Dover Industrial Commercial Committee, they are trying to organize, for lack of a better term, Better Business Bureau, the greater Dover area. So they are going to look at this coming fall, do a kickoff. They may be coming to us as a place of venue. They're trying to figure out where would be a best place to have the first venue. They're also looking to invite Representative Grove and some of the local businesses. They're looking for some names of local businesses. So our list that we use in our December banquet for our businesses. They like to know the local businesses within the school district because it'll be, they're going to use the school district footprint as the Greater Dover Business Association. Okay?
Thank you. Any questions for our friend Chuck? Okay. Superintendent's report. Mrs. Krim.
Really, the only thing that I'd like to ask you is we talked last week about once this ground gets broke for the high school, we'd like to do a groundbreaking ceremony. We talked about July, but thought that August would be more appropriate. We're back. We think the athletic sports start the week we would have it. The August board meeting is the second week in August. We move that up a week, so if we have any last minute hires, we can take care of that before the kids start. So would it be okay if we began planning something for maybe 5 o'clock, 5:30 of the August board meeting, prior to the August board meeting? And again, we won't put anything in stone until we do break ground, but we would like to move on that if that's okay.
It's okay with me.
Sound good? And again, a reminder that the board meeting is the second week in August.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Miscellaneous category. Any other comments or observations from our board members tonight? I'd just like to thank my fellow board members for these past couple of years working through this project. This has been a huge thing for us, something that I don't think many of us have ever been through. And so I appreciate the respectful debate, the respectful discussion, and the ability to get to this point moving forward with such an important activity and item for our district and the future of this district. So thank you to all of you.
Wanted to congratulate all the Dover graduates and commend everyone who had a part in the planning and orchestration of the graduation ceremony, in spite of the uncertain weather at best. But it turned out to be a good morning, and it worked out very well. So kudos to everyone involved.
I'm sure Mr. Wasser was very grateful for that turf field that morning that quickly drained. If only Mr. Rawhauser's basement would have drained that quickly then too, right? Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, that brings us to our last public comment period. This is for items, again, on or off of the agenda. It's a 2-minute period, so if you have anything you'd like to comment on, please come to the microphones. Okay, seeing none at this time, I'd like to entertain, no.
Hold on,
Whoop, we have somebody on the move. I was too fast.
Sorry, Mr. Rector.
That's quite all right.
On behalf of the PTO, we wanted to thank the board again for your pledge of funds to our playground. We'd also like to have a groundbreaking before the school starts. So again, if the board can come and anybody can come, we'll be planning and putting that in place as well. So that way you can all come out and see, your hard work and your money put to action. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, future meeting announcements. We do not have that listed here. The date. Do you have the date in front of you? I know you said it's the second week of August.
Yeah, we have July.
July 17th.
So July 17th?
Okay. Oh, July 17th, yes. July 17th at 7 o'clock p.m. So with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Yes? We're adjourned. Thank you.